Jerome Hayes was 39 years old, made $67,000 a year as a senior HVAC technician, and believed, with the simple faith of a man who worked with his hands, that loyalty was the bedrock of a life. He believed this right up until 5:17 p.m. on a Tuesday in late September, when a courier in a crisp blue uniform handed him a thick manila envelope on the porch of his 1,400-square-foot bungalow in Eastland. The air was thick with the coming autumn, a damp chill that promised cooler nights, but inside Jerome, a cold dread began to spread that had nothing to do with the weather. He sat at the simple oak dining table he'd refinished himself 2 summers ago, the one that had cost him $80 at a secondhand store and 3 weekends of sanding and staining. The seal on the envelope was stiff. He slid it open with a butter knife from the kitchen drawer. The words swam before his eyes, dense blocks of legal text on heavy, important-feeling paper. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Below that, in a slightly smaller font, Simone Hayes, petitioner, versus Jerome Hayes, respondent. He read the demands, his heart thumping a slow, painful rhythm against his ribs. She wanted the house, the one he was sitting in, the one whose leaky faucet he'd fixed just last week. She wanted spousal support, citing a disparity in earning potential. She wanted a 50% stake in the future value of any business he might start. She wanted everything. His eyes scanned down the page, landing on the name at the bottom. Sterling and Croft, P.LLC. He didn't know much about Charlotte law firms, but even he recognized that name. It was the kind of firm that had offices in the glass towers uptown, the kind that advertised in glossy magazines, the kind that cost more per hour than he made in a week. He dropped the papers on the table. The $67,000 a year he earned felt like minimum wage. The calluses on his hands, a source of pride from years of honest work, suddenly felt like a mark of his own foolishness. He had spent 15 years building a life with a woman who had just hired a legal wrecking ball to demolish it. And he hadn't even heard the engine start. He had no idea what was coming, but he knew in his gut that this was not just the end of a marriage. It was a declaration of war. Have you ever felt the ground beneath your feet turn to sand? That sickening lurch of realizing everything you thought was solid was just an illusion? It's a feeling of betrayal that cuts deeper than anger. Let us know in the comments if you've ever faced a moment that changed everything you thought you knew. Their life together had been built on a foundation of mismatched dreams, something Jerome only understood in retrospect. They bought the bungalow on a quiet tree-lined street in Eastland 7 years ago for a modest $250,000. For Jerome, it was a palace. He saw the solid bones of the 1960s brick construction, the mature oak tree in the backyard perfect for a tire swing he hoped a child might one day use. The potential in the unfinished basement for a workshop. He spent his weekends installing a new water heater himself, a $600 Ream unit that saved them a $1,500 plumber's bill. He tiled the bathroom backsplash with $150 worth of materials from Lowe's, his large, capable hands carefully setting each piece. He saw every project as an investment, sweat equity poured into their shared future. Simone saw the house as a stepping stone, a starter home. She worked in marketing, a junior account manager at a boutique firm, and she spoke of brand identity and upward mobility. Her world was one of client dinners and networking events, a world that felt a universe, away from his of ductwork and condenser coils. While he was proud of his worn, steel-toed Red Wing boots, which cost a solid $220 but lasted for years, she was starting to build a collection of designer shoes. It began subtly, a pair of $400 Kate Spade heels for a work gala. Then a $1,200 Louis Vuitton handbag she said was an essential networking tool. "You don't understand, Jerome," she'd say, her voice patient, as if explaining a complex theory to a child. "In my industry, perception is reality. I can't show up to a client meeting looking like I shop at a department store. He didn't argue. He loved her, and he wanted her to be happy. He just assumed they were on the same team, climbing the same mountain from different sides. He managed their finances, a role he took on with meticulous care. He created a budget in an Excel spreadsheet tracking every dollar. His $67,000 salary and her $55,000 salary went into a joint checking account. From there, he paid the $1,450 mortgage, the bills, and their living expenses. And every single month, without fail, he transferred a minimum of $1,500 into a high-yield joint savings account at a separate bank. That was the Dream Fund. Hayes Mechanical LLC, he called it. His plan was to save up $100,000, enough to buy 2 used work vans, the best equipment, and cover 6 months of operating expenses. He wanted to be his own boss, to build a business that was his own, something to leave behind. He would talk about it some nights, sitting on their comfortable, if slightly worn, $900 Ashley furniture sofa. Another 2 years, Simone. We're at $70,000 now. Once we hit 6 figures, I can give my notice. I've already got a business plan drafted. She would nod, scrolling through her phone, her thumb flicking across the glowing screen of her new $1,100 iPhone. That's nice, honey. Her lack of interest was a dull ache he chose to ignore. He thought she was just tired from work. He didn't realize her silence was boredom, her distraction was disdain. The first real crack in the facade appeared about a year ago. Her sister, Chloe, decided to start an event planning business. It was called Innovative Bloom LLC. Simone had been so excited. She just needs a little help getting started, Jerome. A business line of credit to show she's serious. The bank required a guarantor. Chloe's credit was non-existent. Simone's was tied up in student loans and the credit cards she used for her networking wardrobe, so they asked Jerome. He was hesitant. He was a cautious man by nature, but Simone had framed it as a test of his loyalty. Don't you believe in my family? Don't you believe in me? So he went to the bank. He sat in a small, sterile office and signed the papers. He put his name, his credit, his solid financial history on the line for his sister-in-law's dream. The line of credit was for a small amount, just $10,000, tied to the business's operating account. The bank manager assured him it was a formality, that as guarantor, he would have access to account information if ever needed. He filed the paperwork in his metal filing cabinet in the basement, in the folder labeled Financials, and promptly forgot about it. He had no idea that in signing his name, he had just armed himself for a war he didn't even know was coming. He just thought he was being a good husband. The cruelty began the week after the papers were served. It wasn't loud or violent. It was a cold, quiet poison, delivered through phone calls and text messages. Jerome learned that Simone had moved out while he was on a week-long commercial installation job in Raleigh. She had packed her things, her entire walk-in closet of clothes, a collection he now realized was worth more than his 2012 Toyota Camry, and simply vanished. The first he knew of it was when he came home to the empty hangers and the gaping spaces in the bathroom cabinet. When he finally got her on the phone, her voice was distant, as if she were speaking from a great height. I couldn't stay there, Jerome. I need space. I need to be in an environment that reflects my ambitions. An environment? Simone, that's our home. A short, dismissive laugh came through the phone. It's a house, Jerome. A little brick box in a neighborhood that's going nowhere. I'm in South Park now. He knew South Park. It was where the real money in Charlotte lived. Gated communities, luxury boutiques, and gleaming new high-rise condominiums with rooftop pools and concierge services. He looked up the address listed for her on the divorce papers, the VUE Charlotte. He found the website, One-bedroom apartment started at $4,000 a month. $4,000. That was nearly two-thirds of his take-home pay. How can you afford that, Simone? The question was genuine, born of a decade of shared budgeting and financial planning. That's not your concern anymore, she said, her tone sharp. I'm making new investments. I'm building a new life. You should try to do the same. It was then that he thought to check their savings. He logged into the online banking portal, his fingers fumbling on the keyboard of his 5-year-old Dell laptop. He clicked on the joint savings account, the one labeled Hayes Mechanical Dream Fund. He expected to see the familiar, comforting balance, just over $94,000. The number that appeared on the screen was $17.38. The room tilted. He felt a wave of nausea, the kind that comes with a physical blow. He scrolled through the transaction history, his heart pounding. There were the familiar monthly deposits from their checking account, a steady, marching line of green. And then, 2 weeks ago, there was a single, massive withdrawal, a wire transfer, outgoing wire transfer to Innovative Bloom LLC, amount $94,000. Innovative Bloom, her sister's company. He called her back immediately, his voice shaking. The savings, Simone. The business fund. It's gone. What did you do? I told you, she said, her voice dripping with condescension. I made an investment. Chloe's business is taking off. We needed to inject some capital to land a major contract. It was a smart business move. Our money? Our life savings? You took it without even talking to me? It wasn't our money, Jerome. Let's be honest. I was the one with the vision. You were just the guy putting money in a sock. You have no idea how business works. You think small. You were holding me back with your little dream of driving around in a van fixing air conditioners. I'm destined for more than that. I'm building an empire. Each word was a perfectly aimed dart. Little dream. Fixes air conditioners. Holding me back. She was systematically dismantling his worth, his identity, everything he was proud of. He saw it then. This wasn't just a divorce. It was a hostile takeover of their shared history. She wasn't just leaving him. She was erasing him. A few days later, a mutual friend, unaware of the depth of the conflict, sent him a screenshot from Simone's Instagram. It was a picture of Simone, beaming, standing in front of a brand new, gleaming white BMW 3 Series, the kind that started at $43,000. The caption read, "Leveling up. New car, new life, new standards. Hashtag boss babe. Hashtag empire." He sat in the quiet of his bungalow, the house that now felt cavernously empty, and looked at the picture of the woman he had loved. Her deep brown skin was luminous against the white car, her hair in elegant, intricate braids that must have cost a fortune. She was wearing a dress he'd never seen before, a sharp, tailored piece of clothing that screamed money. She looked happy. She looked free. And he felt like a fool. The outrage began to burn in his chest, a slow, steady heat. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the contempt. She hadn't just taken their savings. She had spit on his dream on her way out the door. He had no idea how wrong she was about him. He didn't crumble. He got quiet. The call came on a Thursday morning at exactly 10:14 a.m. Jerome was on the roof of a 3-story commercial building off Independence Boulevard, the Charlotte skyline, a hazy silhouette in the distance. The sun beat down, turning the black tar of the roof into a sticky, radiating surface. He was halfway through replacing a faulty condenser fan motor on a 10-ton train unit, his hands covered in grease and his shirt soaked with sweat. His phone, a sturdy Samsung Galaxy with a cracked screen protector, buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. It buzzed again, insistent. He sighed, wiping his brow with the back of his arm. He pulled the phone out, squinting at the screen in the bright glare. The number was unfamiliar, with a 704 area code. but no name attached. Probably a spam call. He was about to decline it when he saw the small text underneath the number, Sterling and Croft, PLLC, his wife's lawyers. A knot of ice formed in his stomach. He braced himself for a barrage from some aggressive paralegal demanding documents or threatening action. He tapped the green icon to answer, his voice tight. "This is Jerome." "Mr. Jerome Hayes?" The voice on the other end was not what he expected. It was male, calm, and deeply resonant. There was no aggression, only a cool, measured professionalism. "Yes, who is this?" "My name is Marcus Sterling. I am, or rather was, the attorney representing your wife, Simone Hayes, in the matter of your divorce." Jerome's mind snagged on the past tense. Was. "I am calling you against my usual practice for a very specific reason," Sterling continued, his voice precise and devoid of emotion. "I am reviewing the financial disclosures and supporting documents provided by my former client. In doing so, I have uncovered a material fact that she failed to disclose to me, a fact that significantly alters the landscape of this case." Jerome stood on that hot roof, the whir of the HVAC units around him fading into a dull hum. He held the phone to his ear, listening. "Your wife submitted a financial affidavit stating that the $94,000 transferred from your joint savings was an investment into an independent business, Innovative Bloom LLC. She presented it as her own separate financial activity." There was a pause. Jerome could hear the faint rustle of paper on the other end. "However, in my due diligence, I cross-referenced the LLC's incorporation documents with the bank's records for the account in question. Your wife didn't tell me about the guarantor line, Mr. Hayes. She failed to disclose that you are the personal guarantor for the very business account into which she transferred the marital assets." Jerome felt a strange, light-headed sensation. The sun seemed to dim for a moment. He leaned a hand against the hot metal casing of the HVAC unit to steady himself. "As you may know," Sterling said, his voice as sharp as a razor, "as the guarantor, you have a legal right to full transparency and access to all financial records for that account. More importantly, the transfer of nearly $100,000 of marital assets into an account you personally guarantee without your knowledge or consent just 2 weeks before filing for divorce is not an investment. It is a textbook case of dissipation of marital assets, and it constitutes fraud." Another pause. This one felt heavier. "Mr. Hayes, my duty to the court in matters of potential fraud supersedes my duty to my client. I cannot in good conscience represent a client who has been fundamentally dishonest about the nature of her financial transactions and has attempted to use my firm to legitimize a fraudulent act. As of 9 o'clock this morning, I have formally withdrawn as her counsel." Jerome was speechless. He couldn't form a thought, let alone a word. "I am not your lawyer, and I cannot give you legal advice," Sterling said, his tone final. "But I would strongly suggest you contact your own attorney and provide them with this information. The guarantor agreement is your key." "Frankly, Mr. Hayes, your wife has made a critical mistake. She told my paralegal to take you for everything, that you would crumble. It appears she severely underestimated you. Goodbye." The line went dead. Jerome stood motionless on the rooftop, the hot Charlotte sun beating down on him. The greasy fan motor sat at his feet. In his hand, his cheap phone felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. A slow smile spread across his face. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had just been handed a map and a shovel. Simone had thought she was burying him. She didn't realize she had just told him exactly where the treasure was hidden. The hardest part was pretending to be broken. For the next week, Jerome had to inhabit the role Simone had assigned him, the simple, defeated man. He had to act normal, or rather, his new normal of a man reeling from betrayal, while he quietly and methodically gathered his ammunition. He knew Simone would be watching, probing for weakness, expecting him to be emotional and predictable. He would give her exactly what she expected. They had a phone call scheduled for that Friday evening to discuss the logistics of dividing their personal belongings. It was the perfect stage. He rehearsed his lines, the quiver in his voice, the long, defeated sighs. He sat at his oak dining table, a small, inexpensive digital recorder he'd bought for $60 at Best Buy next to his laptop. North Carolina was a one-party consent state. He pressed record just as his phone rang. "Hello?" he answered, pitching his voice low and tired. "Jerome?" Simone's voice was crisp, businesslike. "Do you have a list? I want to have movers come on the 15th. I need to know what's mine." "Simone, we need to talk about the money," he said, letting a note of desperation creep in. "I don't understand. $94,000? That was everything. That was for our future." He heard her sigh, a sound of profound impatience. "Jerome, we've been over this. It was an investment. You have to think bigger. You can't build wealth by letting money sit in a savings account earning less than 1%. But to not even tell me? To take it all?" he pressed, playing his part. "How am I supposed to live? How am I supposed to start over?" "You'll be fine," she said, her voice utterly devoid of sympathy. "You have your job. You're good with your hands. You'll figure it out." "I have to go. I have a dinner meeting." She was about to hang up. "Was it my money you used for the new car?" he asked, his voice quiet. There was a brief silence. "It's a company car, Jerome," she lied, the falsehood coming easily, smoothly. "It's a perk of the new contracts I'm landing." "You wouldn't understand." "And the apartment in South Park?" "A corporate apartment?" she lied again. "You need to stop thinking so small. This is how the world works when you're on the way up." "I see," he said. He felt nothing. It was like watching a character in a movie. "Okay, Simone, I'll make a list of your things." He hung up. He saved the recording, labeling it Simone_lie_corporate_assets.mp3. He had her on tape, explicitly lying about the use of the funds. The next morning, Saturday at 9:30 a.m., he walked into the main branch of the bank that held the account for Innovative Bloom LLC. He was dressed in his cleanest work clothes, a pair of $50 Carhartt pants and a simple gray polo shirt. He looked like what he was, a working man. He carried a single worn leather briefcase that had belonged to his father. Inside was a copy of the guarantor agreement he had signed 3 years prior. He sat down with the branch manager, a man in a sharp, $1,500 Hugo Boss suit named Mr. Albright. Albright was initially dismissive, looking at Jerome's calloused hands and simple clothes with a barely concealed air of superiority. "I'm sorry, sir, but we can't provide information on a business account to a third party," Albright said coolly. Jerome said nothing. He simply opened his briefcase and laid the signed, notarized guarantor agreement on the polished mahogany desk. He pointed to the relevant clause, his finger steady. Then he slid a second document across the desk, a letter from his newly retained lawyer, formally requesting full access as per the agreement. Albright's expression changed. The professional smile tightened. He read the document, then read it again. He picked up his phone and made a quiet call to the bank's legal department. Jerome waited in silence, watching the expensive Swiss watch on Albright's wrist, a Tag Heuer, that probably cost $5,000, tick away the seconds. After 5 minutes, Albright hung up. His entire demeanor had shifted. He was now deferential, efficient. "My apologies, Mr. Hayes," he said, avoiding eye contact. "Of course. What documents do you require?" "I want a complete transaction history for this account, from its inception to the present day," Jerome said, his voice calm and even. "Print it out. Every deposit, every withdrawal, every check, every wire transfer. An hour later, he walked out of the bank with a 1-inch thick stack of papers. He went to a nearby Starbucks on Lexington, ordered a $3 black coffee, and sat in a corner booth. He spread the statements out and began to read. It was all there. The initial $10,000 from the line of credit, a few small deposits and withdrawals. Then, the big one, the $94,000 wire transfer from his savings account. And then, the spending spree began. $15,000 wire transfer to BMW of South Charlotte. Memo. Down payment, 3 series. $8,000. Check to the VUE Charlotte. Memo. First/last month rent. $2,450 charge at Burberry South Park Mall. $3,500 charge at Crate and Barrel. $870 at a high-end salon. Countless charges for hundreds of dollars at expensive restaurants, bars, and boutiques. It was a meticulous record of her betrayal, time-stamped and dollar-tagged. The company car and corporate apartment were lies, paid for with the money he had saved, penny by penny, for their future. He carefully organized the pages, highlighting each damning transaction with a yellow marker. He felt a cold, clean anger rising within him. She hadn't just underestimated him. She had mistaken his kindness for weakness. And that was a mistake she was going to pay for. Jerome found his lawyer through a referral from a co-worker whose cousin had gone through a contentious divorce. Her name was Anita Rowe. Her office wasn't in a glass tower uptown. It was in a modest 3-story brick building in the University City area, a place of practicality and purpose. The sign on the door was simple: Rowe Law, PLLC, Family and Financial Justice. Anita was a sharp, intelligent black woman in her late 40s with a no-nonsense energy that Jerome found immensely reassuring. Her hair was styled in immaculate locks, adorned with a few silver beads that clicked softly when she moved. She wore a simple, elegant navy dress that probably cost a few $100s, not a few thousand. When Jerome sat down in her office, she didn't offer platitudes or empty sympathy. She looked him in the eye and said, "Okay, Jerome, show me what you got." He laid it all out on her large oak desk, the divorce petition from Sterling and Croft, the thick stack of bank statements for Innovative Bloom LLC, with his yellow highlights glowing like warning signs, the original signed guarantor agreement, and the digital recorder with the audio file of Simone's lies. Anita listened intently as he told the story, her expression unreadable. She picked up the guarantor agreement first, reading it carefully. A slow, grimly satisfied smile touched her lips. "This is beautiful," she said, her voice a low hum of appreciation. A classic case of too clever by half. She thought she was hiding the money, but she hid it in the one place you had a key. She spent the next hour reviewing the bank statements, her pen making sharp, decisive notes on a legal pad. She listened to the audio recording twice, her eyes closed in concentration. When she was done, she leaned back in her chair, her gaze sharp and focused on Jerome. "Here's where we are," she began, her tone shifting from analysis to strategy. "Simone has committed felony-level financial fraud and perjury by filing a false financial affidavit with the court. The dissipation of marital assets is clear, premeditated, and egregious. The fact that her own high-priced lawyer dropped her is the cherry on top. Marcus Sterling is protecting his license, and in doing so, he gave you all the leverage we need." She quoted him her fee, a flat $5,000 retainer. It was a significant amount of money for Jerome, especially now, but it was a world away from the $25,000 retainer Sterling and Croft likely charged. He wrote the check without hesitation. "So what's the plan?" he asked, feeling for the first time in weeks a flicker of hope. "The plan is not to fight," Anita said, steepling her fingers. "The plan is to enforce. We are not going to get into a messy emotional battle with her. We are going to use the evidence to execute a swift, quiet, and decisive legal maneuver. We will not be attacking her. We will be presenting the facts to the court and the bank. The consequences are a natural result of her own actions. She laid out the steps. First, they would file an emergency ex parte motion to freeze all assets of Innovative Bloom LLC, effective immediately. The motion would include the bank statements showing the fraudulent transfer and the subsequent personal expenditures. Second, they would file a motion for contempt and sanctions against Simone for filing a false affidavit. Third, they would petition the court to have the entire $94,000 plus Jerome's legal fees returned to a trust account under the court's supervision to be awarded to Jerome in the final divorce decree as a remedy for her fraud. We will do this all at once, Anita explained. A coordinated strike. She won't know what hit her. She'll get a call from her bank that her account is frozen, and then she'll get a call from the court. By the time she understands what's happening, the money will be out of her control. Her new lawyer, whoever she manages to find, will read our motion and tell her she has no choice but to capitulate. Jerome listened, a sense of calm settling over him. This wasn't about revenge. He didn't feel the hot burn of rage anymore. He felt a cold, clear sense of purpose. It was about justice. It was about accountability. It was about taking back the future she had tried to steal from him. She called my dream of owning my own business little, Jerome said quietly, looking at his own calloused hands. Anita Rowe met his gaze, her eyes unwavering. There is nothing little about building something honest with your own two hands, Jerome. Let's get to work. The strike was executed with the precision of a military operation on a Monday morning. Jerome was at work, replacing a faulty compressor on a residential unit in the Dilworth neighborhood, when his phone buzzed with the first confirmation. It was a text from Anita. 9:01 a.m. Motion to freeze, filed and granted. Court order is on its way to the bank. Jerome took a deep breath, the smell of solder and refrigerant filling his lungs. The first move had been made. In her gleaming South Park high-rise, Simone was just finishing her second cup of coffee from her $700 Nespresso machine. She was scrolling through interior design websites, planning the purchase of a $3,500 white leather sofa. She was still annoyed about her lawyer, Marcus Sterling, dropping her. He had mumbled something about a conflict of interest, but she was sure it was because she hadn't paid his massive retainer fast enough. She had already found a new, cheaper lawyer online, someone who seemed eager for the business. She wasn't worried. The money was safe in Chloe's business account. Jerome was probably still moping in that sad little house. At 9:07 a.m., a courier arrived at her door with a letter from Sterling and Croft. It was the formal letter of withdrawal. She skimmed it, annoyed at the dense legal language. It cited failure to disclose material facts and potential fraudulent representations to the court. It strongly advised her to correct her financial affidavit immediately. She tossed the letter onto her marble countertop. Lawyers were so dramatic. At 10:32 a.m., she clicked Purchase on the Crate and Barrel website for the white sofa. A red error message flashed on the screen. Payment declined. Frowning, she tried again. Payment declined? An irritation sparked within her. She opened her banking app to check the balance on the Innovative Bloom account. Instead of the roughly $60,000 she knew should be there, she saw a balance of zero and a stark notification in red letters. Account frozen by court order. A cold shock went through her. She immediately called the bank's business line. After 10 minutes on hold, a nervous-sounding representative informed her that a judge's order had been received. All funds were frozen pending a hearing. They could give her no more information. Panic began to bubble in her throat. She called her new lawyer, a man she had only spoken to once on the phone. He sounded flustered. "I just received the motion from your husband's attorney," he said, his voice strained. "Simone, they have everything? The bank statements, the guarantor agreement. They have a recording of you lying about the car and the apartment. Why didn't you tell me about any of this?" "He can't do that," she shrieked into the phone, her carefully constructed composure shattering. "It was my investment. It's my money." "The court is not going to see it that way," the lawyer said, his voice flat. "They are going to see it as a fraudulent transfer of marital assets. Simone, you have committed perjury. This is serious." Her world, so shiny and new, was starting to crack at the seams. She hung up on the lawyer and tried to call her sister, Chloe. Chloe answered, her voice hysterical. "Simone, what did you do? The bank just called me. The business account is frozen. I have checks bouncing for the wedding I'm planning this weekend. My client is threatening to sue. You've ruined my business." Simone sank onto her floor, the cold tile a shock against her skin. The divorce papers she had so confidently served felt like a lifetime ago. She had told her lawyer to take Jerome for everything, that he would crumble. But Jerome hadn't crumbled. He had been quiet. He had been methodical. While she was posting her new life on Instagram, he had been collecting receipts. While she was drinking expensive champagne, he had been building a case. The man who fixed air conditioners, the man she had dismissed as simple and small, had just dismantled her entire world before lunchtime on a Monday, and he hadn't even had to raise his voice. The silence from his end was suddenly the most terrifying sound in the world. What do you think is the most satisfying moment of justice? When the truth comes out in court, or the quiet moments when an antagonist realizes they've been completely outplayed? Share your thoughts below. The consequences cascaded, not like a sudden explosion, but like a slow, inevitable demolition. Each pillar of Simone's new life was knocked out, one by one, leaving her standing in the rubble of her own creation. First, there was the money. The emergency hearing was a formality. Anita Rowe presented the evidence with calm, unassailable clarity. The bank statements, the purchase orders for the BMW and the condo lease, the recording of Simone's lies, it was an open and shut case. The judge, a stern woman who did not suffer fools, was visibly angered by Simone's brazen attempt to defraud the court. She ordered the entirety of the frozen funds, which amounted to $58,342 after Simone's spending spree, to be transferred to a court-managed trust. She then went a step further. She placed a lien on the BMW and ordered that upon its sale, the proceeds up to the remaining balance of the original $94,000 would also go into the trust. Finally, she ordered Simone to pay for Jerome's legal fees, another $7,500. In total, the court clawed back every single cent she had taken. The empire was bankrupt. Second, there was her legal representation. Her new cut-rate lawyer, seeing the mountain of evidence and the judge's fury, quit the case the day after the hearing, citing that she had misled him as well. No other reputable family law attorney in Charlotte would touch her case. Word travels fast in legal circles, and the story of the client Marcus Sterling dropped for fraud was already making the rounds. She was professionally toxic. Third, her relationship with her sister was irrevocably destroyed. Innovative Bloom LLC was a legitimate business, albeit a small one. Simone had used it as her personal piggy bank, commingling the stolen marital assets with Chloe's actual business funds. The frozen account caused two of Chloe's events to collapse, ruining her reputation and landing her in legal trouble with her own clients. Chloe, facing lawsuits and the ruin of her dream, blamed Simone entirely. The sisters who had once plotted together now only communicated through angry text messages. Fourth, the luxury lifestyle evaporated. Without the steady flow of cash from the LLC account, she couldn't make the next payment on the $43,000 BMW 3 Series. The lien from the court made it impossible to sell. Within a month, a tow truck came to the parking garage of her South Park high-rise and repossessed the car. A week after that, unable to pay the $4,000 monthly rent, she received an eviction notice. Jerome heard from a mutual acquaintance that she was forced to move her expensive clothes and new furniture into a $150 a month storage unit, packing her $2,400 Burberry dress into a black trash bag. She ended up on the sofa of a friend, her fall from the VUE high-rise as swift as it was complete. Finally, her career, the very thing she claimed to be building her empire on, crumbled. The nature of her divorce became public record. An anonymous tip was sent to her firm's HR department, detailing the court's findings of financial fraud. For a marketing firm that sold trust and image to its clients, an employee found to have committed perjury and fraud was an unacceptable liability. Simone was quietly fired, her upward mobility hitting a concrete wall. Months later, the divorce was finalized. Jerome was awarded the bungalow free and clear. He was awarded the full $94,000 from the trust account. He was awarded his future, his dignity, and his peace. Simone was left with nothing but debt and the consequences of her own choices. She had tried to take him for everything, and in the end, she was the one who lost it all. 2 years passed. The Charlotte skyline had changed, new buildings reaching for the sky, but the rhythm of the seasons remained the same. It was a bright, crisp Saturday morning in October. The air was cool and clean, and the sun cast long shadows across the freshly poured concrete of a new driveway. Jerome stood on that driveway, a set of rolled-up blueprints in his hand. He wasn't in Eastland anymore. After the divorce, he had sold the bungalow, using the proceeds and the returned savings to buy a small plot of land just outside the city limits. Now, the frame of a modest but well-designed house stood on that land, a testament to a new beginning. Parked in the driveway were 2 gleaming white Ford Transit vans. On the side of each, in bold, professional green and blue lettering, was the logo he had designed himself: Hayes Mechanical, LLC, Integrity, Service, Comfort. The vans, worth about $45,000 each, were filled with the best tools and equipment money could buy, all paid for in cash. His dream, the one Simone had called Little, was now a thriving reality. He had 3 full-time employees, good men he was training himself, and a waiting list of clients. He was earning more than double his old salary, but it was never about the money. It was about the building. His phone buzzed. It was a picture message from one of his employees, a young man named Kevin. It was a photo of a 5-star review a customer had just left online. "Jerome and his team are the best," it read. "Honest, reliable, and did fantastic work. It's so rare to find a company with real integrity." Jerome smiled. That was the wealth that mattered. It wasn't about glass towers or luxury cars. True wealth wasn't something you could take or hide. It was something you had to build day by day, with your own 2 hands and your own good name. It was the trust of your clients, the loyalty of your employees, the peace in your own heart. It was the quiet satisfaction of looking at something real and solid and knowing you had built it right, from the foundation up. Simone had thought she could build an empire on a foundation of lies, but such structures always collapse under their own weight. Real strength, he now knew, was quiet. It was patient. It didn't need to announce itself with flashy logos or expensive toys. It just was. Life will always test the foundations of what you've built. The storms will come, and the ground will shake. But a structure built on integrity, honesty, and hard work will always stand. Remember that what you build within yourself is the only asset that no one can ever take from you. thank you for joining us on Love Beyond Pride. If Jerome's story of quiet strength and earned justice resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more stories of resilience and hope. We are so grateful to have you in our community.